Okay, Premier,
like
I
reading
want
it,
to
I don't know
each
it's your
other.
byline.
I should have come
It's
early.
not mine.
I'm supporting him. I'm not going to read scans.
Premier, if we could, I'd like to start with renewable electricity. And you and your party campaign in 2013, you talked a lot about the efforts to break the NSP monopoly and open up competition. Do you think that you've actually opened up competition if the public's ability to purchase green energy is hampered by its cost?
Well, I think the job of government is to ensure that you allow the competition in the marketplace. That's what that legislation was designed to do. You see there are some larger, like municipalities, for example, are able to purchase energy to serve to some of their municipal customers. You've seen one in the valley that's actually invested in a wind farm, that energy will go back in its customers. So we're beginning to see that process open up.
When the legislation was drafted, was there any thought given to whether or not it ought to, or its intent was to have NSP cover some portion of costs when it came to access to the grid for green producers?
Well, there's a regulatory piece to that, so that would go before the Utility Review Board. But the price of energy that we pay, regardless as customers now, purchasing it from even from Nova Scotia Power, so we would pay a certain portion of that for generation, and then there's a transmission fee. So you would pay for every kilowatt that comes to your house. You would part of that kilowatt fees for carrying it across the lines, which is that's set by the Utility Review Board and the National Energy Regulator. So that would be regardless of who would purchase that, who you purchase your energy from. You would still have to pay that transmission tariff fee. We couldn't waive that. I mean, that's part of that's set. So our job is really to make sure that we have a regulatory framework that allows people to operate in and like any time that you see in the monopoly that's been broken, whether it's been in this service, the telephone service, it's taken time that other entities can come in and begin to provide that service. We're seeing a bit of that. As I said to you, the municipal levels are seeing that. We're starting to see communities now look at different ways potentially to be able to provide energy to some of the public assets, whether it's rinks in the schools in the particular community. So this is at its infancy, but I think you'll soon begin to see it mushroom.
Can you talk to us about your meetings in Ottawa? Who did you speak with?
I spoke with the Prime Minister. We had a number of topics that we went over. I also had a meeting with the Heritage Minister in the morning, first thing, and then later in the day I met with the Prime Minister.
Sure. So is there any news coming out of that?
Yeah, we talked about a number of things. I just wanted to make sure that he was understanding the priorities that we as a government, we had talked about the investments in infrastructure, whether it's high-speed internet, looking at the Ocean Park, Tech Park in the Dartmouth side, Volta Labs, looking at those as initiatives to retain young people here in our province. I told them that we're continuing to be prepared to do our part at the national agenda to work with them to ensure that the refugees are settled here in our province. I wanted to make sure that they understood that we as a province don't believe this is just a Halifax issue, that we want to spread our new citizens across our province, and that we worked hard to ensure the communities are ready to accept them.
And did you talk about the VG hospital and what that conversation was like?
Yeah, I told them I did talk about the VG hospital and said there'd be, we're working at what a new footprint would look like. We believe that there's a role for a number of partners in that. We hope the federal government will be one of those, making sure it's part of the infrastructure. And I think what we were really trying to say to him to make sure is that the Build Canada Fund is as broad as possible when it comes to the things that we believe will help provide the services to our citizens, but also make strategic investments in infrastructure that will grow the economy of the province of Nova Scotia.
And what was his response to that? What did he say to that?
He was, as he always is, very encouraging. Our ministers will, deal with that, just as we spoke with Health Accord and here in Nova Scotia, that in the demographics of Atlantic Canada, that we need to recognize that at the national level when it comes to delivering health services. And so really our conversation was really about ensuring that he understood from the view of the Premier where we're heading as a province, and then our ministers, when they meet, will do a further discussion about that as the Minister of Health will next week on the Health Court.
But no promises, right? Yeah. Like did he make any promises? Did he make any guarantees?
That's really not how that works, but no, it was just I wanted him to know from the beginning that our Ministers of Health who have and the entire federation come together and would work, and each Minister of Health would provide that, or Minister of Infrastructure Renewal and then respective provinces would come together. I just wanted my initial meeting with him, and this is our first meeting. We've had a few phone conversations, but our first meeting face-to-face was really to talk about needing the flexibility as our province, and what role we can play in the region to help move some things forward.
The federal finance minister on Monday, when he was here, seemed to suggest at least that hospitals weren't really on his radar for the social infrastructure side of the infrastructure spending. So where would this fall then?
I had a great conversation with the Prime Minister to tell what our priorities of Nova Scotia. We'll continue to work with the national government in making sure that our priorities are on the national agenda.
Premier, when the previous federal government changed the approach to the health accord, you and your government were quite concerned. You talked a lot about the disadvantage that the per capita funding model gives to provinces such as Nova Scotia. The health minister just a few minutes ago said that when he goes to the first minister's meeting, he's going to choose instead to focus on how the money can best be directed as opposed to voicing further complaints about the funding model. I'm just wondering if the government's position on the funding model has changed.
No, I think it's fair to say that, what is the best way to achieve what will do the best results for the province of Nova Scotia? Getting into a discussion with the national government about a funding model that we believe is disadvantaged Atlantic Canada, not just Nova Scotia, but Atlantic Canada, but has advantaged other provinces. It's probably one that's going to get more banter back and forth at the table. What we're looking at is looking at the demographic challenges in Atlantic Canada and our population piece. And our message to the national government would be is if you're going to invest more money in healthcare, let's target it towards the aging population so that you would be an offset to what is part of the way you fund now, and not put it on a per capita basis, but use all of the other metrics that you would use for an aging population. So any new money that would come in should be based on the challenges that that we face, and I would say Atlantic Canada faces.
So is it fair to say then that it's not so much your view on the funding model has changed as it is for the sake of getting things done, perhaps you've found a more expeditious